The blues originated in the late 1800s in the rural southern United States, among African American communities that were economically disadvantaged and oppressed. The blues emerged from African American slave songs, such as work songs, spirituals, field hollers, and country string ballads. The blues was also influenced by hymns, minstrel show music, ragtime, and popular music from white Southerners. The blues began to emerge in the late 1800s and early 1900s in places like Texas, Louisiana, the Piedmont region, and the Mississippi Delta. The blues was often played by solo musicians at picnics, weekend parties, and juke joints. The blues captured the suffering, hopes, and anguish of 300 years of slavery and tenant farming. The blues spoke of the experiences of freedmen and women during the Reconstruction and Jim Crow periods. Juke joints helped popularize the blues. W.C. Handy is known as the father of the blues for his efforts in making the blues famous. Early blues verses were made up of a single line repeated 4 times. The most common structure today is the AAB pattern. Contrary to what some people believe, the blues is not slave music. Although it was cultivated by the descendants of slaves, the blues was the expression of freed African Americans. The Great Migration directly influenced the blues' many evolutions. As Black people moved from the South to northern cities, the music reflected the new urban terrain in which the people set up communities. However, the general belief that the blues comes out of slavery lasts to this day, passed down from its predecessors. The beginnings of the blues can be traced to the late 1860s, arguably the most vicious and violent period in the United States. Vigilante justice was at an all-time high, and by 1889, the lynching of African Americans surged dramatically. The bluesman and blueswoman emerged in this difficult period, along with the stories of folk heroes translated to song, and the new venues in which the music would be performed. The blues did not speak of the life of the enslaved, but of the experiences of freedmen and women during the periods of Reconstruction and Jim Crow. It spoke of cotton bales/gins, boll weevil, juke houses, and sharecropping. Farming and sharecropping were the starting places for most of the legendary blues musicians celebrated today, including Charlie Patton, Reuben Lacy, Son House, Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, and B.B. King. The 1890s ushered in what can be referred to as the bad man, the incarnation of the first edition of the New Negro mindset. This describes the rough and tumble Black man or woman who openly defied white supremacy and was just as hard on their African American counterparts. Unlike slavery, where plantation owners had their own judicial system, Blacks were tried in public courts and the jurors, lawyers, and judges were all white. This turned the rebel into a folk hero and even a martyr. This also changed the dynamic of songs. It is during this period that we began to hear songs of men such as Stagger Lee, a song inspired by an actual murder that took place in 1895 in a St. Louis, Missouri barroom argument. It also made the newspaper under the headline, "Shot in Curtis's Place." The story that ran in the next day's edition of the St. Louis Daily Globe-Democrat stated, William Lyons, 25, colored, a levee hand, was shot in the abdomen yesterday evening at 10 o'clock in the saloon of Bill Curtis by Lee Sheldon, also colored. A plethora of songs presented this story throughout time. One of the most famous of the songs was recorded by Lloyd Price. In the description of the man shot, the writer states that the colored man was a levee hand. This reference to working the levee is an example of blues lyrics. Hill country blues legend Mississippi Fred McDowell, for example, sings of working the levee, an embankment built along a river to prevent flooding by high waters.